Vanessa Whitlow hadn't planned on getting scalded with coffee and insulted in the same breath before 10 a.m. But life had a funny way of kicking you when your rent was due. "Watch it," she snapped, looking down at the steaming dark stain now soaking into the front of her cream dress. The jolt of heat had already begun to sting her skin. The man who had bumped into her stood frozen, a paper cup dangling awkwardly from his hand, now half empty. I didn't see you." "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice deep, smooth, and completely out of place in the chaos of the bustling Manhattan cafe. Vanessa looked up, her irritation flickering in her eyes until she actually saw him, tall, clean-cut. Jet black hair that swept back effortlessly, like it belonged in a cologne ad. His suit looked custom-tailored, subtle but expensive, not flashy. Rich but understated. His face was unreadable, but there was something intense about the way he was looking at her. Sharp jaw, piercing eyes. Confident but not arrogant, still none of that excused the fact that her dress was now ruined. "Are you serious right now?" she said, dabbing at the fabric with a napkin. "This was my last clean dress. I'll replace it," he said quickly. "Let me take care of the dry cleaning." "I doubt you carry spare dresses on you," she muttered, still trying to blot the damage. He glanced down at her again, then back up. "You're right, I don't, but I can buy you a new one." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a sleek black wallet. "No thanks," she said, brushing past him. "I don't take handouts from strangers who can't hold a cup." He turned, stepping in front of her again, blocking her path. "Then let's not be strangers. I'm Yarden Ellis," she blinked. "That's supposed to mean something to me." He gave a faint nod, almost amused. "No, it's just my name." "Well, Yarden Ellis, I'm late for work. I smell like espresso, and I really don't have time for where do you work?" She narrowed her eyes. "Why? Because I want to send you a new dress." "Seriously?" she asked, laughing once dryly. "You think you can spill coffee on someone and just fix it by buying them something?" "Yes," he said, "especially when it's my fault." Vanessa sighed. "Vanessa Whitlow," she muttered. "And I work 3 blocks down at Hayworth Agency. Advertising, design," he nodded. "Okay, I'll have something sent over. I'm not giving you my size." "Then I'll guess," he said simply, already reaching for his phone, "and I'll get it right." She stared at him for a moment. "You're not going to stop until you feel like you've fixed this, are you?" "No," he admitted. "I'm not." Vanessa walked around him, shaking her head. "You're persistent. You always like this." "Only when I spill coffee on someone I'd really like to see again." She paused, caught off guard. He didn't press, just gave her one last look and turned away. She didn't expect to see him again. But by noon, a sleek box from Bergdorf Goodman was sitting on her desk with a handwritten card inside. "For the damage I caused and because I meant what I said. Let me make it up to you properly. Dinner tonight, 7 p.m. The Met rooftop." Yarden Vanessa's coworker Olivia leaned over the cubicle wall, wide-eyed. "Who the hell is Yarden, and why is he sending you a dress that probably costs more than my paycheck?" Vanessa held up the card. "Apparently he's the man who spilled coffee on me. And now he wants to take you to dinner on the MET rooftop." Olivia's eyes widened. "You know that's not open to the public except for private events, right?" Vanessa stared at the card again. "Who is this guy? Google him." She did. And stopped breathing for a second. Yarden Ellis. Billionaire, CEO of E-Tech Holdings, private investor, philanthropist, property mogul, 33 years old, worth over $60 billion. She dropped her phone. "What?" Olivia asked. "He's a billionaire." Olivia just gaped at her. "Girl, what are you waiting for? Go." Vanessa looked at the dress again. It was sleek, elegant, and definitely not something she'd ever buy for herself, but the card, the dinner, the fact that he somehow knew her size, it was insane. And yet, by 6:45, she was in a cab heading toward the Met. She nearly turned around 3 times. But when she stepped onto the private rooftop terrace and saw him waiting near a candlelit table with a view of the entire city skyline, it suddenly didn't feel insane at all. He stood as she approached, looking every bit the man she remembered, but somehow even more disarming in the way he smiled at her. "You came," he said. "I still haven't decided if I'm going to forgive you," she replied. "Fair, but maybe I can earn it." She sat across from him, heart pounding. "Why the Met?" she asked. "It's quiet, private, and it has a view worth sharing. You do this for every woman you spill coffee on." "No," he said, eyes fixed on her. Just the one I couldn't stop thinking about since she walked out of that cafe. Vanessa looked away, trying not to smile. Dinner was unforgettable. They talked about everything and nothing. Music, childhood dreams, the things that kept them up at night. He was sharp, funny, and surprisingly open, and for a man who could probably buy a planet, he listened. "I thought billionaires were supposed to be arrogant jerks," she said at one point. He grinned. "That's usually true. I just have good PR." When the night ended, he walked her to the street, the city lights glowing around them. "I want to see you again," he said. Vanessa hesitated. "I'm not part of your world, Yarden. You could be." "I don't need saving," she said softly. "I'm not trying to save you," he replied. "I just want to know you." She stepped closer, the tension between them thick but tender. "This still doesn't excuse the coffee," she whispered. He leaned down, close enough to steal her breath. "Then I guess I'll just have to keep making it up to you." And when he kissed her slow, certain, like he already knew she'd change everything, Vanessa felt the ground shift beneath her feet. She didn't know it yet, but falling for Yarden Ellis would be the most unexpected, exhilarating thing she'd ever do. Vanessa hadn't intended to see him again so soon. But 4 days later, after a whirlwind of late-night thoughts, half-written texts she never sent, and a frustrating inability to focus at work, he was standing in front of her office building, leaning against a sleek black town car that didn't have a scratch on it and probably hadn't seen a single raindrop in its life. She stopped mid-stride on the sidewalk, her takeout bag swinging at her side. "Please tell me you're not stalking me." Yarden pushed off the car and walked toward her, hands in the pockets of his dark coat. "I was in the area." "Thought I'd ask if you've forgiven me yet." "I haven't," she said, eyeing him carefully, "but I'm willing to hear your next argument." "Perfect. I have a reservation and an empty passenger seat." Vanessa crossed her arms. "I was planning on eating this on my couch while watching reruns of old legal dramas." "I'd argue this is the better option," he said, opening the door. She hesitated. "What if I get in and you drive me to a private airstrip and whisk me off to some island in the middle of nowhere? Then you'll get the world's best ceviche and a sunset you'll never forget." She rolled her eyes, but she was already getting in. The car smelled faintly of leather and something expensive she couldn't name. He slid in beside her, the door clicking shut behind him. "Where are we going?" she asked. "You'll see." She didn't expect the restaurant to be hidden behind an unmarked wooden door in what looked like a shuttered flower shop. Nor did she expect the velvet-lined staircase that led down to a dining room lit entirely by hanging lanterns and lined with deep crimson walls. A hostess greeted them by name and led them to a secluded table already set with a bottle of wine. "I didn't even say yes," Vanessa murmured, settling into the plush chair. "You didn't say no either," Yarden replied, pouring her a glass. She studied him as he sat across from her. Tonight, his shirt was unbuttoned just enough to hint at a collarbone, and his sleeves were rolled once, revealing a watch that probably cost more than her apartment's lease. But there was something restless about him tonight, something that didn't match the polished surface. "What's your angle?" she asked, twirling the stem of the glass. He stopped mid-pour. "What do you mean? You're not just some bored billionaire trying to kill time. You don't do anything without a reason." He leaned back, thoughtful. "Do you ever meet someone and think if I walk away now, I'll regret it?" Vanessa blinked. "That's a pretty heavy line for someone who dumped coffee on me less than a week ago. I'm serious, so am I. What's your deal, Yarden?" He didn't look away. "I've spent the last 12 years building something I thought would make me feel like I'd finally made it. But now that I have everything I ever thought I wanted, I'm realizing I don't know what any of it means." She tilted her head. "And you think I'm going to help you figure that out?" "No," he said. "I think being around you reminds me that there's more to life than boardrooms and quarterly returns." Vanessa looked down at the tablecloth, unsure what to do with that kind of vulnerability. "You don't even know me. I know you didn't ask for anything when I ruined your day. I know you didn't pretend to be impressed when you found out who I was, and I know you're not afraid to call someone out, even when they're offering you the world." She took a sip of wine. "You know what I see when I look at you," he raised an eyebrow. "Someone who's used to being in control, but you can't control people. You can't script how they're going to feel about you. I'm not trying to script anything." "Then what are you doing?" she asked, her voice lower now, more curious than skeptical. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table to her. She opened it slowly, expecting a contract or maybe some over-the-top gesture. Instead, it was a pencil sketch, rough but detailed. It was the cafe. The moment they collided, her mid-step, coffee splashing, face turned in shock. "You drew this," he nodded. "I didn't know you could draw. No one does. Why this moment?" "Because it was the first time in a very long while that I didn't feel like I was playing a role." She stared at the drawing, something tight curling in her chest. The food arrived exquisite, plated to perfection, but neither of them reached for it right away. "I don't know what you're expecting from me," she said, finally breaking the silence. "Nothing," he said quietly. "Just time, that's all I'm asking for." She looked at him, really looked at him. Not the billionaire. Not the man who could reserve a secret restaurant or sketch like an artist. Just the man who was trying awkwardly, earnestly to connect. "Time," she repeated. "All right. But no more surprise rooftop dinners. If you want to see me again, you ask." Like a normal person, his mouth lifted slightly. "Deal. And next time," she added, "you get the check." He held up his hands. "Now that's pushing it," she laughed, the first real one of the night. Later, as the car pulled up outside her building and he walked her to the door, she hesitated. "Why me?" she asked softly. He didn't answer right away. "Then, because you're the first person who made me forget what I'm supposed to be and remember who I actually am." Vanessa opened her mouth, but no words came, not yet. Instead, she nodded once and stepped inside, her heart doing something it hadn't done in years. It stumbled. And Yarden stood there for a long time after the door closed, staring at the space where she'd been, knowing something had shifted again, and this time, it wasn't going to shift back. Vanessa leaned against the rusted railing of her apartment's fire escape, knees tucked to her chest, the skyline glowing in the distance. The chilled evening air nipped at her skin, but her mind was too loud to notice. Since that night with Yarden, her thoughts had spun like a carousel on overdrive, each memory of his voice, his expression, his drawing, pulling her deeper into something she hadn't planned to feel. She hadn't responded to his last voicemail. Not because she didn't want to, but because she did. Too much. The next morning, she was halfway through a pitch meeting when Janine, the front desk receptionist, knocked on the glass wall of the conference room and mouthed something unintelligible. Vanessa excused herself, heart racing for reasons she didn't want to name. Janine's eyes were wide. "There's someone here asking for you. Says his name is Armani." "Yarden," Vanessa muttered. "That's it," Janine whispered. "He's in the lobby. He's wearing a scarf. No man should look that good in a scarf." Vanessa gritted her teeth. "What does he want?" He wouldn't say. "Just that he needed 5 minutes of your time." She found him near the glass entrance, flipping through a photography book from the lobby's display table like he had all the time in the world. The scarf in question was charcoal gray, knotted neatly over a camel coat that probably belonged on a Milan runway. "You can't just show up at my job," she said under her breath. "I didn't want to text," he said, closing the book. "I thought you'd appreciate the effort. You thought wrong." "I brought you something," he added, reaching into a slim leather bag and pulling out a bundle wrapped in tissue. "I designed it myself, just a prototype, no label." She stared at it. "You design clothes now, I don't." "But I sketched something and my tailor owed me a favor." She didn't move. "I'll leave it here," he said, placing it on the bench beside him. "I didn't come to pressure you, I just wanted to say something I should have said earlier." She crossed her arms. "I'm listening." "I'm not used to feeling uncertain," he said, "but with you I never know what you're going to say or how you'll read me, and for some reason that makes me want to try harder." Vanessa exhaled slowly. He continued, "I know what this might look like to you. Money chasing a challenge, curiosity dressed up as charm, but that's not what this is, not for me." She glanced around, aware of passing coworkers. "I'm not here to complicate your life," he said. "But I'd rather be honest and get rejected than stay silent and regret it." She picked up the package, her fingers brushing the edge of the tissue. "I don't need another man trying to fix something in my life, Yarden. I don't want to fix you," he said gently. "I want to know you, the real you. And if that means hearing no, I'll walk away." She met his gaze, unsure whether to be angry or impressed. "I'm not saying yes," she warned. "Understood. but I'm not saying no either. A flicker of something passed between them, uneasy, electric, inevitable. That evening, curiosity got the better of her. She unwrapped the fabric. It was a sleek navy blouse, hand-stitched, with delicate pleats at the collar and a subtle waist tuck that flattered her figure without trying. It was elegant but not overdone. Personal, not performative. The next morning, she wore it. And when she stepped into the gallery on Fifth, where Yarden had invited her to see a new exhibit by a little-known sculptor, his reaction was immediate. "You wore it," he said, his voice lower than usual. "I wanted to see if it held up outside of a sketchbook." He offered his arm, and she took it without thinking. They walked the exhibit slowly, strange, twisting forms in bronze and glass catching the light in fragmented reflections. Most people around them were murmuring critiques or sipping champagne. Yarden ignored them all. "You used to draw," she said after a long silence. He nodded. "Back in college, it was the only thing that made time disappear." "What changed?" "I got good at something else, something louder. Something that paid." They stopped in front of a sculpture shaped like a collapsing tower. "Do you ever miss it?" she asked. "I didn't," he said, "until I met you." She turned slightly. "Why me, Yarden? What is it about me that's got you chasing me through galleries and designing blouses?" He paused. "Because you don't need me." "That's not usually a selling point." "It is for me," he said. "Most people I meet want something, access, prestige." "You walked away from a dress worth $2,000 because you didn't want to owe me anything." She tilted her head. "You like being told no. I like being surprised." They moved to the next piece, a single suspended marble teardrop floating from a barely visible wire. "What do you see?" she asked him. He studied it. A moment about to fall, Vanessa didn't respond. Afterward, they stepped out into the street, the sky soft with dusk and early stars. "I still don't know what this is," she said, folding her arms. "We don't have to name it," he replied. "We just have to feel it." "That's poetic," she said, raising an eyebrow. "I'm apparently full of surprises." A black car pulled up beside them. He opened the door for her. "I didn't say you could take me home." "I didn't say I'd let you walk alone." She considered him, then slid in. The ride was quiet but not tense. Her hand rested on her lap, fingers twitching as if tempted to reach for his. He didn't push. Outside her building, she lingered on the sidewalk. "Do you ever wake up and wonder if your life was supposed to turn out differently?" she asked suddenly. "All the time," he said. "But lately I've been wondering if it's just beginning." She looked at him, the streetlight catching the edge of his jaw. "Good night, Yarden. Good night, Vanessa." She walked inside without looking back. But behind her, Yarden stood on the curb longer than necessary, staring up at the windows until he saw her silhouette pass by. For the first time in years, he didn't care which meeting he was late to. He cared about this moment, fragile, uncertain, and more real than anything money could buy. 3 weeks later, Vanessa stood alone in the middle of an unfinished penthouse. Raw concrete floors, floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Manhattan like a painting. No furniture, no distractions, just Yarden standing at the opposite end of the room watching her. "I bought this place a year ago," he said. "Never showed it to anyone." She turned slowly, taking in the vast emptiness, the echo of her heels on the cold floor. "Why now?" "Because if I'm building anything next, I want it to be real. Every part of it." Vanessa crossed her arms. "You didn't bring me here to talk about real estate." "No," he admitted. "I brought you here because I need to say something that doesn't fit in a restaurant or a car or a gallery. I need space for it." She didn't move, didn't speak. Yarden walked toward her, measured and deliberate, stopping just close enough to catch her breath. "I've spent most of my life making deals. Calculated, controlled, guaranteed. I'm good at that. But this thing, whatever it is between us, it doesn't follow rules. And I've never been more uncertain in my life." Vanessa's voice was quiet. "Then why not walk away?" "Because the last time I walked away from something that mattered, I regretted it for 10 years. She tilted her head. "What was it?" "My brother," he said, his voice flat but steady. "He died before I ever told him I forgave him." Her eyes flickered. "What happened? We were partners. When we started the company, it was supposed to be ours. But when the money started coming in, he made choices that hurt people. I pulled away, cut ties. The night before I planned to reach out again, he was gone." Vanessa didn't speak, shoulders tense beneath her coat. "I didn't tell you that for pity," Yarden added. I'm telling you because I know what it feels like to let pride ruin something you care about. And you think that's what I'm doing. I think you're scared that if you let me in, you'll lose yourself, he said, but I've never asked you to change. I'm here, offering you a place beside me, not behind. She looked down, breathing shallow. I'm not the girl who fits into a billionaire's world, she said finally. Then I'll build one that fits you. Her gaze snapped up. I'm serious, he went on. I want to create something with you. Not because it's impressive, not because it's flashy, but because it matters. You don't even know what I want, she said. Then tell me, she hesitated. I want to design something that makes people feel something, not just sell a product. I want to use my hands again. Sketch, build. Not just pitch and polish. Yarden reached into his coat and pulled out a folder, extending it to her. She opened it slowly. Inside were plans, mock-ups, a proposal, a new design firm, independent, funded, co-owned. Her name was on the cover. I didn't submit it, he said. I didn't register anything. I wanted your permission first. Vanessa blinked, the papers shaking slightly in her hands. You've been working on this since the night you wore the blouse. She stared at the words again, her name, her vision, her instinct. You'd fund this. I'd invest in you, he said. Not as a favor, as a partner. She closed the folder, eyes bright but unreadable. I don't want to be your project, she said. You're not, he said. You're the only thing in my life that hasn't been a transaction. Vanessa stepped toward the window, resting a hand on the cold glass. Below them, traffic moved like veins of light, life pulsing forward whether she was ready or not. She turned back to him, the last of her resistance fading. Okay, she said, but I want full creative control, no interference, agreed. And I get final say on the name. I wouldn't dream of naming it without you, she studied him. This doesn't mean I'm in love with you, I know, he said, but I am in love with you. The room went still. Vanessa's breath caught. I didn't ask for that, she whispered. You didn't have to, he said. I fell anyway. She closed the distance between them, her hands finding his lapels. I'm terrified of what you make me feel, she said. Good, he murmured. So am I. When she kissed him, it wasn't cautious or tentative. It was certain, fierce. Like diving into something that might break her bones but would be worth every fracture. Yarden held her like he'd been waiting years for this exact second. And maybe in some way he had. Later that week, at the launch event for Whitlow and Ellis Studio, the city buzzed with speculation. A new firm, a surprise partnership, a woman no one in the industry had heard of before standing beside one of the most powerful men in the country, her hand tucked confidently in his. Vanessa wore no diamonds, no designer gown, just a sleek black dress of her own design. Modern, minimal, honest. A reporter asked her what it felt like to suddenly be a player in the world of elite creatives. Vanessa smiled and leaned toward the mic. It feels like I finally stopped waiting for permission. Yarden stood just behind her, silent, his eyes locked on her like she was the only thing that held his world steady. And when she turned to him, when her fingers found his without needing to ask, he knew. This wasn't a chapter. It was the beginning of everything. He'd spilled coffee on a woman's dress in a crowded cafe, and he'd never expected to fall in love with her, but he had, completely, irrevocably, and this time he wasn't walking away. The first time Vanessa stepped into the finished studio, she didn't say a word. Yarden watched her from the wide glass archway as she moved through the space, her fingertips grazing the smooth oak of the central table he'd commissioned from a woodworker in Vermont. The place smelled of fresh paint and ambition. Natural light spilled across the polished floors, catching the chrome accents and hanging installations overhead. It was everything she'd dreamed of, but never dared to imagine could actually be hers. Vanessa turned slowly, her heels silent on the textured stone. You didn't tell me you were planning to restore the skylight. You didn't tell me you'd cry when you saw it, he said, stepping toward her. I'm not crying. You're blinking a lot. She exhaled through a shaky laugh and leaned against the edge of the drafting table. I can't believe you remembered the sketches I showed you that night. I don't forget things that matter. She looked at him, her expression softer than he'd seen it in days. You've been quieter lately. I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous. He leaned beside her. About what's next. For us, you mean business-wise? No, he said. I mean us. Vanessa folded her arms. You already helped build me a studio. What more could you possibly have planned? He reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a slim velvet box. She stared at it, unmoving. "I know it's fast," he said, "but I've never been more certain of anything." She remained still. "Yarden, I don't want to wait for the right time. I want to make our time the right one." He opened the box. It wasn't flashy. No oversized diamond or ostentatious glare. It was a platinum ring with a delicate, interwoven design, 2 strands twisted together, forged seamlessly into one. "I didn't want something that looked expensive," he said. "I wanted something that looked like us." Vanessa blinked, her mouth barely open. "You're serious. I'm in love with you. I want to build a life with you, not just a business. I want to wake up next to you on Sundays and argue about which tea brand is better and hear you hum when you're sketching without realizing it. I want the boring stuff. The real stuff. All of it." She ran a hand over her jaw, her posture stiff with shock. "You're asking me to marry you." "I am." She paced 3 steps away, turned, and came back. "You didn't even ask my ring size. I measured one of your rings while you were in the shower." "I had help. That's borderline invasive. I call it resourceful." Vanessa took the box from his hand and stared at the ring. "You really don't see anything as impossible, do you?" "I see you, and that's enough." She looked up at him, eyes glinting, her breath uneven. "What if I say yes and we implode? What if we ruin everything we've built?" "Then we'll rebuild it," he said. "Together." Silence stretched between them, heavy, crystalline, and then she slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "I'm saying yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But not because you asked at the perfect moment or in the perfect place. I'm saying yes because I don't want to imagine any version of my future where you're not in it." Yarden didn't speak. He stepped forward and wrapped her in his arms, lifting her slightly off the floor as he kissed her fierce, open, and unfiltered. She laughed against his mouth. "You know this means we'll have to tell Olivia. She'll scream," he said. "She'll cry. She'll probably demand to be the maid of honor. She'll threaten to quit if I don't let her plan the reception." "Let her," he said, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Let everyone see it. I want the world to see what we are." Later that month, they held an intimate ceremony on the rooftop of the very museum where it all began. The skyline flickered behind them as string lights bathed the space in gold. Her dress was simple. When she designed herself elegant ivory silk with a subtle architectural back that caught the light with every step. Yarden wore a midnight blue tuxedo. No tie, sleeves rolled with just enough rebellion to remind everyone he never played by the rules. The vows were handwritten. Vanessa's voice didn't falter once. "I never expected you," she said, her eyes locked on his. "But you didn't crash into my life. You walked in, steady, unshaken, and reminded me that love doesn't have to be a storm. Sometimes it's just a man bringing coffee, ruining a dress, and giving you a reason to stop running." When she finished, Olivia sobbed so loudly someone passed her a napkin bouquet. Yarden's vows were shorter. "I've built empires," he said, his voice hushed but certain. "But nothing compares to building a home with you. I don't want to be the man who has everything. I want to be the man who has you." They kissed as the wind picked up and scattered petals across the marble. That night, Yarden carried her into their new home, a glass-wrapped penthouse overlooking the river. No press, no cameras, just them, the bed unmade. The kitchen stocked with her favorite pasta, a sketch taped to the fridge, the cafe moment. The beginning, months passed. Vanessa's firm took on clients she once only dreamed of. She hired young designers without degrees and gave them the platform she never had. Her name became known in the industry, not because of who she married, but because of what she created. Yarden stepped back from the front lines of his tech empire. He spent more time at the studio than the stock exchange. He started sketching again, quietly, often when she wasn't looking. They fought sometimes, about cabinet organization, about who used the last of the oat milk, about whether or not they should adopt a dog. They made up even faster. He surprised her with a weekend in Kyoto after a brutal project deadline. She surprised him by turning his old sketches into a children's book and publishing it under his name. They never stopped learning each other. And one crisp autumn morning, as Vanessa stood barefoot on the balcony in his oversized sweater, watching the sunrise, she felt a flutter in her stomach that was more than nerves. She turned slowly. "I think we're going to need one more room." He froze. You're sure? She nodded. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and scooped her into his arms, spinning her once before setting her down gently. You've already given me everything, he said, pressing his forehead to hers. She smiled. Not yet. But we're just getting started. And in the city where they met, in the life they built from one spilled moment, they kept choosing each other, every single day without hesitation, without regret, together. Always.